I'm grateful for the kindness that the people of Taiwan have shown me every day. I don't think I could live here if it wasn't the way it is. I'm Cole from Canada. Came to Taiwan back in 1999. My sister was already in Taiwan with her boyfriend since 1997. Bubby dies, girlfriend breaks up with me. She's like, Cole, you're not doing well. Why don't you come to Taiwan? And it was literally like 1 or 2 weeks on that airplane. Like it was like quick. When you walk out of the airport for the first time, the doors open and you feel this like vortex of like hot just consume your body, like just boom. It was also a challenge. Many of the people in the Taoyuan airport, which is crazy to think now, did not speak English. My sister was teaching at the time, but her boyfriend, he was meant to pick me up at Sogo. He showed up on his motorcycle and I'm like, I don't think we can carry my bag. And he's like, okay, take a taxi and tell the taxi to follow me. The taxi was doing all right at first, but he was an old dude. He didn't speak any English. And I was just pointing like, friend, that way. So the taxi ended up getting confused. And then he just, out of frustration, said, hala hala or whatever, and then had me get out of the taxi. He didn't make me pay him, didn't want to be dealing with a foreigner anymore. This is old Taichung, 1999. Taichung has grown up a lot. Anyway, so I don't speak any Chinese. I'm jet lagged. The hottest time of year. I'm sweating, I'm panicking, I'm crying. I find this business guy, he has a cell phone. He was the one guy that spoke English and I was just like, oh, thank you, God. And he's like, do you need help? So I call him, Ryan answers, and Ryan said, say the name of the apartment. I think it was called Dajinghua or something. And thankfully the second taxi had heard of the building that I was trying to get to. And then Ryan, at that point I went up and my sister had just arrived home, just looking at Ryan like, you idiot. They had a car and a motorcycle. Anyways, there was my sister. She could just see tears flowing out of my eyes. Like she just gave me a hug and it was just like, okay, I'm home. I'm safe. And it was so hot and I'm like, can I turn on the air conditioning? And my sister was just like super cheap. She's like, no, not before 6 p.m. Like she had this rule or whatever. Like, I don't care if you're melting like a candle, take a shower. And the first day they take me for the pie, steak and noodle and egg, and the gravy is bubbling up and you need to hold a tissue to stop the gravy from hitting your splatter. Of course that was delicious, but I mean anything at that point would have been good. Everything was exotic to me, right? Then where did they take me? They took me to a KTV. Today all my troubles seem so far away.
You gotta do KTV.
And I had my first Taiwan Hijou, and then the next day she took me to get my first scooter, which I think is insane now. Got on the scooter and I literally drove halfway off the parking lot and fell. And no one ever really showed me how to drive properly.
No license, nothing.
No license, yeah. Well, 50cc you could get away with not having a license. Anyways, I ended up moving into my own apartment. It's like the size of your tiny hotel room. It was just like a bed. It had a window and a balcony though. And I'm teaching. I said to my sister before I came, but don't I need like a university degree? And she's like, well, you can just say you have one and they'll hire you. And I was like, are you sure? In 1999, yes. Now, no. This is old Taiwan, right? This is like Taiwan trying to become a first world country, but still kind of a second world country-ish. So my first job was in Fengyuan, and I remember that the owner handed me a stick and said, if the kid misbehaves, hit the kid. And I'm like, I'm Canadian, we didn't do this in our schools. So I'm teaching, the kid's misbehaving, and I hit one of the kids, started crying, and I put the stick down, and I'm like, I'm never doing that again. I feel like a terrible human being. To make a long story short, I ended up staying there for maybe a month or two. I was a terrible teacher at the time. No one gave me any formal training, so I ended up getting fired. I didn't know what was going on.
No training, nothing.
No training. I mean, now I've been teaching, it's been over 20 years. I think I'm a pretty awesome teacher now. Because I wasn't able to get an ARC, because I didn't actually have a proper thing, I would have to go on a visa run once a month somewhere.
Once a month?
Yeah.
That's a lot.
I was doing this for years, so I wasn't able to save anything. My wife, when I was dating her, she was amazed at how little I worked and how little money I had. I was like making like not even 30,000 NT a month, you know? Whereas other foreigners were like raking in the dough. I always felt this moral discomfort about having the job
illegally.
Yeah, I would quit out of stress. I think I once shared my dirty little secret about that with this highly educated foreign woman. I remember she just looked at me and rolled her eyes like, just figures.
Wow,
like,
that's
oh,
snooty.
like just cut me right in my heart. That haunted me for a long time, up until I finally went and furthered my education. It bothered me a lot. But at that point, honestly, I would say I had a teaching degree from all the years that I taught. And so now I'm just like everyone else, but it's just like, so.
You were saying in the beginning when you were here, communication was an issue. What was the level of English like then compared to now?
Very low. I think Taichung, I'm sure most people would speak English now. And back then, yeah, a lot of Chinese, some Taiwanese.
I'm gonna ask this question. I hope you don't take it the wrong way though.
No.
How can someone live in a country for so long and not speak the language?
No, I appreciate you asking me.
Yeah.
Well, number one, I'm grateful that the language that everyone's obsessed with in Taiwan happens to be the language that I speak. And if my wife hadn't spoken English so well, I was just like, you're hot, I want to know you, I want to be with you. Maybe that would have forced me to learn the language, but you're hot, I want to be with you, and you speak my language. Great. So I'm grateful if Taiwan wants to be international, which is why I think you can get away with speaking English and less Chinese. Like, I picked up words. People get me. I can order food and I can have silly little conversations. But if you're teaching English, then there really is no reason why you should be expected to speak the language. I really went years using body language and finding people that speak English. Like, it's sad when you think about it. Like, kind of cut off my experience of Taiwan a lot. I would eat a lot of food from like 7-Eleven or places where I didn't have to communicate that much. And now I use Google Translate, I use ChatGPT, and I even have earbuds. And when people are talking, it actually translates it to English. But I think that I know the culture on an intimate level as deeply as anyone who speaks the language. I mean that, like, I know it on a blue flip-flop level, intimately, deeply in my heart. Like, there is an energy. I can feel the energy of a place, and I just vibe.
What is the energy of Taiwan?
The people are really proud of here, and they really care about sharing that with us. They've had someone looking over them for many, many years. They really want to be seen as their own country, and they want to be seen. I was sitting in Family Mart with my son. This guy comes in and he's like, oh, do you like stinky tofu? And I'm like, yeah.
Oh, of course.
And he's like, wait. And he just runs out and like literally 10 minutes later comes back with a bag of stinky tofu. And then he stood there and he didn't believe I've tried stinky tofu before. I say, oh, you take the cabbage and the sauce and mix it together. And so he waited until I opened it, and my son and I, we tried it, and he said, is it good? Like he needed to know that I'm like, yeah, it's good. I like stinky tofu. And he's like, okay. He left. He just wanted to see me try the pride of Taiwan. So I still have these beautiful connections.
Just kind of backing up, how did you meet your wife?
I met her at a nightclub, actually. It was called DNA. That was part of my wedding speech. Like, and let me tell you, there was DNA everywhere. Anyway, I'm dancing. I'm having fun, whatever. And I look across and I see this beautiful blonde-haired, blue-eyed girl. I was so mesmerized that I walked across the dance floor over to the bar where she was sitting, and I just said, hey, I'm Cole, do you want to go dance? And she's like, okay. We were living together after 2 months. Lived together ever since, like 2001. Damn. 23 years, yeah. But we didn't have kids until 2010. They're my translators too. They speak English and Chinese and Taiwanese to each other. I do struggle with the public school system. Number one, I don't speak the language well, so I can't chat with the teachers if I'm having a problem with something. It always lies on my wife. Just culturally, like, they just have way too much homework here. You know how people defend it? They say, oh, but in Japan and Korea it's much worse. I'm like, okay, but they have higher suicide rates, and I see kids here with gray hair. So I struggle with my kids being in school because I see their frustration and I see them crying sometimes and just getting stressed about tests. Why do you need that kind of stress at such a young age? I've met people that are less educated than me that are wonderful human beings that have contributed to the world and society in ways that you would think school was irrelevant. My wife and I always joke about becoming farmers, having a sustainable farm.
You need to be a citizen to have farmland in Taiwan.
Oh, my wife's a citizen.
Your wife is a citizen. Both of your kids are citizens.
So I think the better question to ask me is, does it bother you that you're not allowed to be a citizen without renouncing your Canadian citizenship? And the answer is yes. For Taiwan to be on the international stage, you need to start allowing immigration from different cultures. And most of those cultures are not going to want to give up their original passports. It's sacred.
Do you want an icky political question?
Sure.
What would it take for you to move your family to Canada because of China?
I'm torn about it, to be honest with you. I really love of my Taiwanese family here, like my wife's mother and father and her brother and his wife and my sister-in-law and my 2 nephews. Part of me wants to stay and fight and defend this place because I love this place, but I also need to keep my kids safe and alive in that situation. I think we would probably end up back in Canada. At the end of the day, your own children are always going to matter the most.
Your kids, if they do stay here, they would get drafted.
Yeah.
At least for a little while.
Yeah, and I actually had this other crazy thought, what if that happened while they were doing their time in the Army? To counteract this question, I think that we will coexist. I hope, as I put my hands up, that China can see it that way too. I could very likely spend the rest of my life here. That would throw a real wrench in my plans.